Boris Yeltsin always had a flair for unpredictable behavior, but this was a real surprise 20 years ago. He still had 6 months to run on his presidential term in Russia, but would not see it out.
Today, on the last day of the expiring century, I am resigning.
By the time he stood down, Yeltsin was not a healthy man. His issues, including a love of drinking, had become noticed on the world stage. The man he chose as his successor was his polar opposite. Vladimir Putin was a career intelligence officer and not a politician, who'd witnessed firsthand the chaos after the collapse of the Soviet Union. He said Russia needed stability, and by March of the new century, he'd won his first presidential election.
Those who speak about a possible dictatorship are themselves dreaming of it. Their dream is impossible in modern Russia. The train has left.
Russia was fighting a war in Chechnya against separatists who wanted independence when Putin took office. And by the end of 2000, it had imposed direct rule. Tens of thousands were killed in a conflict that lasted until 2009. Chechen fighters took the conflict out of the region more than once, with takeovers of a theater in Moscow in 2002 and a school in Beslan in southern Russia 2 years later. On both occasions, hundreds were killed when the sieges were ended by Russian forces. Despite apparent good relations on the surface with other world leaders, there was a growing ruthlessness that characterized Putin's role. Be it political opponents like Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who were jailed for years, or journalists such as Anna Politkovskaya, a critic of abuses in the war in Chechnya, who was gunned down in Moscow on Putin's birthday in 2006. Despite condemnation internationally, Russia's been allowed the honor of hosting world events such as the Winter Olympics in the Black Sea resort of Sochi in 2014. Very soon after, Russian forces started to annex Ukraine's Crimea region. This after Ukrainian protesters ousted their pro-Russian President Viktor Yanukovych. Crimea was then made part of Russia after a referendum, which led to EU and US sanctions.
After a difficult, lengthy, tiring sailing, Crimea and Sevastopol are returning to the home harbor, to the home shores, to the home port, to Russia.
The influence of Putin and Russia has been felt beyond its shores. The decision to enter the Syrian war in 2015 turned the tide of the conflict in favor of the regime of Bashar al-Assad, but at a devastating cost to Syria and its people. While there are still lingering allegations that Russian influence may have played a hand in the election of Donald Trump as the US president. Under a leader who likes to be seen as an action figure, after 20 years in power, the stability he wanted for his country may still be elusive. But there's no denying that Russia has restored some of the geopolitical might that was once wielded by the Soviet Union. Francis Collings, TRT World.